Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Dakbo Adigboye, and here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. Let's begin in Europe, where the United Kingdom government has announced the expulsion of a Russian Defense Attache, accusing them of operating as an undeclared military intelligence officer. Interior Minister James Cleverly delivered the news to Parliament on Wednesday, adding that diplomatic status would be revoked from several Russian-owned properties, including one in Sussex, southern England, and another in London, amidst allegation of their involvement in intelligence activities. Cleverly also outlined new restrictions on Russia's diplomatic visas, including a cap on the duration of stay for Russian diplomats in the country. These measures come in the wake of growing concerns within the UK government regarding what they describe as a surge in malign Russian activities within the country. Meanwhile, the expulsion of the Russian Defense Attache and the tightening of the diplomatic restrictions mark a significant escalation in tensions between the UK and Russia.
Will expel the Russian Defense Attache, who is an undeclared military intelligence officer. We will remove diplomatic premises status from several Russian-owned properties in the UK, including Seacock's House, a Russian-owned property in Sussex, and the Trade and Defence section in Highgate, which we believe have been used for intelligence purposes. And we are imposing new restrictions on Russian diplomatic visas, including capping the length of time Russian diplomats can spend in the UK. Russia has failed to provide any explanation for these events. In the coming days, we should expect accusations of Russophobia, conspiracy theories, and hysteria from the Russian government. This is not new, and the British people and the British government will not fall for it and will not be taken for fools by Putin's bots, trolls, and lackeys. Russia's explanation was totally inadequate. Our response will be resolute and firm. Our message to Russia is clear. Stop this illegal war. Withdraw your troops from Ukraine. Cease this malign activity. And Mr. Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Britain's ruling Conservatives on Wednesday suffered their second defection to the main opposition Labour Party in as many weeks, piling pressure on Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Natalie Apkick crossed the floor in the House of Commons moments before Sunak's weekly grilling by lawmakers, adding to his woes after heavy losses for the Tories in English local election last week. The latest defection comes as Sunak's Tories lost 1,500 councillors in the local elections as they languish in the polls before a general election expected later this year. As of late April, 63 Conservative MPs have said they do not intend to run in the next general poll, according to a tally by the Institute for Government. Speaking shortly after the defection on Wednesday, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, insists that it is a policy that counts in general elections.
This time last year, I reminded him of some advice, actually, from his own mentor, Tony Blair, who had said at the time, he can be as cocky as he likes about local elections, but come a general election, it's policy that counts, Mr. Speaker. Now, one year on from that advice, what has he managed? £28 billion of tax rises, 70 new business regulations, 30 U-turns, and a deputy leader under a police investigation. London. So just this morning, we've learned that the Labour mayor in London believes, and I quote, that there is an equivalence between the brutal terrorist attack of Hamas and Israel defending itself. And let me be crystal clear, there is absolutely no equivalence between a terrorist coup and a democratic state. So can I ask him now, will he take this opportunity to demonstrate that that Labour Party has changed? And will he condemn those comments from the Labour mayor?
Mr. Speaker, if 1 week a Tory MP who's also a doctor says the Prime Minister can't be trusted with the NHS and joins Labour, and the next week the Tory MP for Dover, on the front line of the small boats crisis, says the Prime Minister cannot be trusted with our borders and joins Labour, what is the point of this failed government staggering on? Well, Mr. Speaker, in addition to losing 2 Tory MPs in 2 weeks, the Prime Minister's been on the receiving end of some of the biggest by-election swings in history. He's also lost 1,500 Tory councillors, half of his party's mayors, and a leadership election to a lettuce. How many more times do the public and his own MPs need to reject him before he takes the hint?
Well, Mr.
President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, has accused the far-right AfD for betraying Germany to the autocrats. Delivering a speech at the German conservative CDU party Congress on Wednesday, the EU president alleged that the AfD is making propaganda for Putin and spying for China ahead of the European elections. Campaigning for a second term as European Commission president with European Parliament elections in June, von der Leyen, who herself is a CDU member, noted that those who stand up for democratic society must be protected, regardless of the party they belong.
Über Gefahren für unsere Demokratie sprechen, dann geht es nicht nur um Positionen und Inhalte, es geht auch um Menschen. Und egal ob Ortsrat, Landtag, Bundestag oder Europäisches Parlament. Wir müssen all diejenigen vor Übergriffen schützen, die sich für unsere demokratische Gesellschaft und unser Land einsetzen, egal welcher Partei sie angehören. Denn wenn diese Menschen nicht mehr sicher sind, dann ist unsere Demokratie auch nicht mehr sicher. Und deshalb müssen die Täter die volle Härte des Gesetzes spüren. Ich fasse einfach mal zusammen. Die AfD macht vor der Europawahl Propaganda für Putin und Spionage für China. Und erst schwadroniert die AfD über Volk und Vaterland. Und dann verrät die AfD dieses Vaterland hinterrücks an die Autokraten. Die sollen sich was schämen, liebe Freundinnen und Freunde.
A Stockholm court has fined climate activist Greta Thunberg for disobeying police orders after blocking access to Sweden's parliament during a protest. Police removed Thunberg on March 12th and 14th after she refused to leave the main entrance, where she is protesting with a small group of activists for several days. The court said it fined the activist 6,000 Swedish kronor and ordered her to pay 1,000 kronor in damages and interest. Thunberg has been fined twice before in Sweden, in July and October 2023 for civil disobedience during a similar protest. In February, a London judge dropped charges against her for disturbing the peace during a demonstration against the oil industry in October in the British capital.
Jag är rädd för den framtid som väntar oss om vi fortsätter i den här riktningen, och det är globala forskarsamfund tydliga med att vi är på väg rakt åt fel håll och mot en framtid som inte kommer vara säker. Jag tänker att det är absurt att det är de fredliga klimataktivisterna som agerar för att försöka stoppa det här extremt exploativa, våldsamma och dödliga system som ställs inför rätta, snarare än de som tillåter det här fortgå och aktivt förvärrar situationen och därmed försätter människor i direkt fara. And the laws that we have now are protecting extractive industries rather than protecting people and the planet, which I think our laws should be protecting.
A new report from the BBC has painted a concerning picture for our oceans. Analysis reveals that the global temperatures have broken records every day for the past year, fueled primarily by climate change. This extreme heat wave is having a devastating impact on marine life, with some areas experiencing the worst coral bleaching events ever recorded. Scientists say the culprit is greenhouse gas emission, but the natural phenomenon El Nino has also contributed to the warming waters. For decades, oceans have acted as a safeguard for climate change, absorbing vast amounts of heat and carbon dioxide. However, this latest data suggests they may be reaching a tipping point as experts express worry about the rising sea surface temperatures. Since March of last year, average surface temperatures have skyrocketed, reaching a high in August. The situation hasn't improved in recent months, with February and March of this year seeing new daily highs. We'll go on a quick break. When we return, we have more stories. Stay with us. Let's now bring you updates on the war in the Middle East. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has confirmed that the United States paused a shipment of bombs to Israel over concerns that the country was approaching a decision to launch a full-scale assault on the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Speaking at a Senate Appropriation Defense Subcommittee hearing on Wednesday, the Pentagon chief disclosed that one shipment of high payload ammunition has been paused for Israel. He noted that the Pentagon is yet to make a final decision on how to proceed with the shipment. The delayed arms shipment comes as U.S. President Joe Biden faces mounting diplomatic pressure from diplomatic or democratic lawmakers and some parts of the U.S. public to rein in Israeli operations in Gaza amidst rising civilian deaths and worsening humanitarian crisis. Despite firm and vocal U.S. opposition, Israel appears poised to mount a large-scale invasion of Rafah, a congested part of southern Gaza that is Hamas' last major stronghold in the region.
I think we haven't made any decisions. We did pause as we reevaluated some of the security assistance that we're providing to. And my final comment is that we are absolutely committed to continuing to support Israel in its right to defend itself. So we've been very clear, Senator, as you know, from the very beginning that that Israel shouldn't launch a major attack into Rafah without accounting for and protecting the civilians that are in that battle space. And again, as we have assessed the situation, we paused one ship.
For more on this, I'm joined on the news by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, now how will Israel and the U.S. proceed after the decision the U.S. took to stop the shipment of weapons?
Well, this decision actually happened in the last couple of days, and the U.S. Defense Secretary has said that Washington has been very clear over its stance over a possible offensive on Rafah. And it's thought that the U.S. actually stopped this shipment of weapons because of Israel launching an attack without accounting for and protecting the civilians that are in that battle space. And that battle space is in Rafah. Now, when this U.S. Secretary was asked what the next step will be, he said the government has not made a final decision on how to proceed with the shipment. Now, this particular shipment is thought to have contained 1,800 9-kilogram bombs and 1,700 225-kilogram bombs. That was according to a senior administration official. Now, Israel, on the other hand, have said that they have no response to the U.S. pausing this arms that was supposed to be sent to them.
Now, what information do we have about the happenings within Rafah?
Well, it's a desperate situation within Rafah at the moment. The only maternity hospital in the city has been shut down. The maternity hospital only had 5 delivery beds and was particularly overcrowded after airstrikes in the north of Gaza forced all the pregnant women to move to that part of the city. So that hospital has been closed at the moment, and it's not clear where any women in Rafah will go if they need to give birth, if they have any complications. Now, the United Nations Relief Agency said no aid has crossed into Gaza via the Kera Shalom crossing. That's as of about 1 o'clock this afternoon. That's been described as disastrous for the humanitarian response. And the Hamas-run health industry has updated the number of Palestinians now being killed in the war since October 7th to 34,844, and a further 78,404 have been injured.
Now, we also understand that protests continue, at universities across the world. What's the update?
Yes, definitely. These protests that started at US universities and universities all around Europe, here in the United Kingdom as well, are persisting. Now, barricades have been erected by pro-Palestinian protesters at the University of Amsterdam today. A police bulldozer was used to knock down some of those barricades at another site connected to the University of Amsterdam, and 169 people were detained. It comes after arrests were made at the Swiss University campus in Berlin yesterday. Police have taken similar action at Sorbonne University in Paris, and Ireland's Trinity College this week said it would pull investments from Israeli companies that the United Nations linked to settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory. That was after protests by their students also.
All right, so thank you so much for your time on the news, Afia. Now, let's also tell you that the Russian Foreign Ministry issued a stern statement today, calling on Israel to strictly adhere to international humanitarian law following the entry of Israeli tanks into the border city of Rafah. Speaking at a press briefing, ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova emphasized Russia's concern over the escalation, citing the presence of over 1 million civilians in the affected area. She went on to stress that Russia demands the strict observance of international humanitarian law, underscoring the need for all parties involved to prioritize the safety and well-being of citizens.
Стабилизирующим фактором, в том числе для всего региона, стало начало наземной военной операции Израиля в Рафах на юге Газы. Там сосредоточено около 1,5 миллиона палестинских гражданских лиц. В связи с этим требуем неукоснительного соблюдения положений международного гуманитарного права. Хотела бы подчеркнуть, Россия также прилагает активные усилия по освобождению удерживаемых в Газе россиян, граждан других стран. Сложившаяся ситуация подтверждает позицию нашей страны о необходимости наряду с усилиями по преодолению острой фазы кризиса приступить к созданию условий для налаживания прямого диалога между палестинцами и израильтянами по всему комплексу вопросов окончательного статуса.
The head of the World Health Organization, Chief Tedros Ghebreyesus, has sounded the alarm that humanitarian services to hospitals in the southern Gaza Strip may soon come to a halt, as they have only 3 days to feel left due to closed border crossings. The WHO Director General on Wednesday disclosed that the border closures are impeding the delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Despite international objections, Israel sent tanks into the overcrowded southern city of Rafah on Tuesday and seized the nearby crossing into Egypt. This is the main conduit for aid into the besieged Palestinian city. The Israeli authorities control the inflow of humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Fuel that we expected to be allowed in today has not been allowed in, meaning we only have enough fuel to run health services in the south for 3 more days. WHO has pre-positioned some supplies in warehouses and hospitals, but without more aid flowing into Gaza, we cannot sustain our life-saving support.
Gaza health workers and Hamas authorities have disclosed that at least 49 bodies were found buried at the Al-Shifa medical complex in Gaza City. According to the sources, the corpses which have now been removed were found at the facility previously raided by Israeli forces. The Israeli military repeatedly targeted Al-Shifa, the Palestinian territory's largest hospital, and other medical facilities in its war against Hamas, triggered by the Palestinian group's unprecedented October 7th attack. Israel accuses Palestinian militants of using hospitals as command centers, where they also alleged held hostages abducted on October 7th. Hamas, however, denied the accusation. Last month, around 30 bodies were reportedly found buried in 2 other graves in the hospital courtyard. After the Israeli assault in March, the WHO said Al-Shifa has been reduced to ashes, leaving behind an empty shell with many bodies.
ما نقوم به هو انتشال عدد من الشهداء المتحللة، الجثث المتحللة غير معروفة نهائيا، وذلك لوجود جثث ليس لها رؤوس، وجثث معفنة ومتحللة من شدة التعذيب. وهذه المقبرة الثالثة التي يتم انتشال منها الشهداء بعد أن قامت قوات الاحتلال بارتكاب مجازر عديدة بحق المدنيين وبحق النساء وبحق الأطفال في داخل مجمع الشفاء.
اليوم طبعا تم إخراج عشرات الجثث من هذا المكان، مجمع الشفاء الطبي. الجثث هي عبارة عن جثث لأطفال ونساء ورجال، وأغلبهم مرضى كانوا يرقدوا على سرير المرض، كانوا مرضى في المستشفى ومنع عنهم العلاج ومنع عنهم العناية الطبية، ومن ثم تم استشهادهم أو تم تصفيتهم وتم دفنهم بشكل جماعي. في أعمال البحث متواصلة ويوميا نأخذ الجثث من هذا المكان، وتبين أن هناك عدد غير محدود من المقابر الجماعية. في كل زاوية يوجد مقبرة جماعية في كل مكان. اليوم تم نبش مقبرة جماعية وإخراج 15 جثة، وما زال العمل جاريا لإخراج.
Finally, in Asia, Hong Kong has demanded all internet platform operators to remove a protest song, Glory to Hong Kong, after a court banned it on Wednesday. The song, which was popular during pro-democracy demonstrations in the country, was judged as a weapon to incite violent protest in 2019. Wednesday's ban comes after a campaign by the city's authorities against the song, which has seen them demand it be removed from Google's internet search results and other content-sharing platforms. Speaking on the ban, the city's Secretary for Justice, Paul Lam, disclosed that the move is to persuade the internet service providers not to provide the convenience and not to facilitate the commission of unlawful acts. And that's a wrap on the news at this time. Don't forget to send in your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. You can also follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live across these platforms. That's DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dakbo at Digboy. Goodbye.